Hello, everybody. I think we are going live. Yes, I think I see the notification. Just want to make sure that everyone can hear us and see us. So guys, if you're tuning in live, super excited. We have a very special guest here. Usually I'm by myself and I just want to make sure I can see the chat, because a lot of the time I don't get to see it. I can see that there's some people jumping on live. So if you are here, just give me a wave in the chat so I know that you can hear us, and it's just not me thinking to myself that I'm talking to myself. We've got 5 people that have jumped on. So hello, Michelle. Thanks for tuning in. Yay, we can hear you. So guys, super. Hi, Danielle. Thanks for giving us a wave. Now there's a number of people jumping on. Yay, and waving. But oh, look, lots of you guys. Fantastic. You're all here. I'm super excited. Most of you know me. My name's Dana Kay. I am your ADHD health practitioner, but I'm so excited today to have Ashley Gobeil joining us. She is an ADHD specific child and family therapist, and she's going to join me today to talk about this very important topic of parenting children with ADHD. Hi, Ashley. How are you?
Hello. Good. It's so good to be here and connecting again.
I know. You've been here before, and so some people may know you already. Hi, Isabel. Hi, Jessica. Thanks for tuning in live. Just want to tell a bit about you, Ashley. You are extremely experienced. As you over 15 years now, probably more now. I think that we had that bio from a couple of years ago. So Ashley has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in social health and counseling, a master's of social work qualifying. She also has completed a range of certifications on family therapy, developmental trauma, attachment theory, and so much more. Ashley is our resident child and family therapist inside our program, but she also works in many different contexts of child and adolescent mental health, domestic and family violence, divorce, child trauma. She's very experienced with ADHD, ODD, and learning difficulties. But all of the families inside our program know and love her so much, as she does a call every Wednesday evening. So hello again, Ashley. There's your bio.
There's my resume.
There's the resume. And for those of you who listen to my podcast, The Soaring Child, Ashley's been on a number of times, and I just love having her. We have this, every time I speak to Ashley, I just feel this calm come over me, and I leave that discussion feeling like I am going to be the best parent in the world, because you just have this way, and it's beautiful. But most importantly, the strategies that you share are specific to kids with ADHD, because we all know that parenting a kid with ADHD is not like parenting a neurotypical kid. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely more tricky.
A little bit more tricky. Oh, there we've got Leah. Leah's joined a few times. She's saying Ashley's so helpful. Thanks for sharing that, Leah. So we have a number of questions for you today, and we have gotten this from our audience, from people watching and wanting to know certain things about parenting a child with ADHD. And we have our first question from Fatan, and she asked, how can we help our children to control and manage their anger and frustration?
Yeah. Right off the bat, hey, what are we doing with anger? So yeah, that is, I think it's probably a really common one that parents find tricky with those kids with ADHD, around how does their anger and frustration show up. So I'm a little bit curious around, is it anger and frustration? Is it showing up in ways that feel really unsafe? Did you say Fatan asked the question?
Yes.
How old the child is, is it those kind of really big where it starts to move from anger into aggression, because we know that anger and frustration are just everyday feelings. So part of it is we actually don't want children to repress their emotions, right? We want to be able to support them in feeling seen and heard and acknowledged in anger and frustration. I think what's tricky is how they show it, how it's coming out in the behavior. And I know a lot of the kids that we talk about in the program is they're showing it in the behaviors that feel really out of control, sometimes really hurtful and harmful to themselves and others. So yeah, I guess thinking about how do we get them to manage and develop emotional regulation. That's what's going to help them be able to control that anger and frustration in safe and healthy ways. So people might be going, well, how do we build that emotional regulation for kids with ADHD? Well, we know that the first building block is supporting children is being able to actually identify the feeling in their body and in their mind. So, and that often comes from us as the adults, naming it for them. So actually saying, you look really angry right now, and naming it with empathy. So identifying, helping them identify their feeling. Some other emotional regulation building blocks are supporting them to express that feeling. So it might be about giving them suggestions in the moment, but most of the time they're learning that from how, we model anger and frustration, which can be tricky at times as well. Yeah, so I think that first one in particular, when kids have ADHD and emotions can feel really overwhelming in the body, and can trigger that nervous system response into, like you're saying, the big behaviors, is really starting with that, helping them identify the feeling and helping them connect it to their body. So it's like, oh, you look really angry right now. You're even clenching your fists and you're stomping your feet. I know sometimes when I get angry, I find it hard to breathe, or I get really hot. So you're kind of supporting them through that verbal description, but also getting them to connect maybe back into body can help.
Yeah, I love the way that you lay that out. And I have tried that at home with my younger son, who doesn't have ADHD. And I think when you've got kids that have ADHD, it's hard for you to decipher between what's normal or atypical and what is the ADHD. And a lot of the time it's just the normal development of the child. And so my older son, most of his symptoms are at bay and everything's going well with him. But for my younger son, when I first heard that strategy from you, I was like, oh, that's going to go down funny, isn't it? But I remember in the moment, this one time around the dinner table, and he started to get very worked up, and I started to name it, and all of a sudden he's like, well, yeah, I am angry. And just from naming it brought that level down, and it was actually quite amazing. And at first, like, he's like, well, what are you doing? But it really did help to tame it. And I know that you use that
oh yeah, Dan Siegel's name it to tame it.
Yes.
Name the feeling. Yeah.
Yes.
And naming it with, like you said, that kind of curiosity and empathy, like, yeah, you're getting really worked up. You're really angry right now. Or if it feels like it's this out of control feeling, and parents sometimes go, well, I don't know how to guess it. I will just say to parents, this looks like a really big feeling right now. This looks like it's really hard. You're having a hard time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like you don't know what to say as the parent. You don't know how to guess it or name it. Just name the experience you think that child's having in the moment.
And I think that it is definitely about consistency. If you try this name it to tame it once here, once there, it's really hard for both of you because it's not normal for you. It doesn't feel like easy to do. But if you're doing it every single time when they are having these big emotions and these frustrations and anger, and going to them saying, I see that you're angry, or I see you having a really hard time, it seems tough. I'm here with you and to help you. And doing that just brings it down. And if they're then starting to get used to doing that and you acting that way, then they can see that that's, a more healthy way to handle a situation than yelling at them, or, to handle your emotions as well.
Yeah. And it takes time, it can take a lot of consistency, a lot of experiences of naming that feeling for them. All of a sudden, weeks or months later, they're going to say to you before you can even name it, I'm really angry.
Yes.
That's a win. That means they've been able to recognize it themselves. Yeah.
Great. No, that's fantastic. So our next question comes from Danielle, and she asks, very curious, how to motivate a child who has zero interest in basic care, like brushing teeth, hair, showering. She said, we've tried natural consequences, like if you don't shower or brush your hair or your teeth, then peers might say something. Or she's saying in her daughter's case, the consequences come too infrequently, i.e. she doesn't brush her teeth, she gets a cavity, because obviously the time that it takes to get a cavity is quite long. And so the connection isn't there for her. She said she's also tried reward systems, which only seem to work for a few days, and then it's back to not caring at all.
Aye. I think, the first thing I'd pick up on is the attempt to use those reward systems. So when it's that behavior modification approach, like incentive, reward, consequences, punishment, those usually, most of the time, don't work in the long term for kids, for all kids, but in particular kids with ADHD. It has me thinking about that Dr. Ross Green's, the concept he uses about kids do well when they can versus kids do well if they wanna. And so I'm curious about what's getting in the way for her. What makes it hard for her to want to care about those basic kind of hygiene? Was it toothbrushing and showering and hair washing?
Hair brushing.
I don't know if Danielle's in the call now watching, but I'd be curious around, like how long that might be happening for. There's some stuff around ADHD and lethargy. I don't know, Dan, if you've spoken to a lot of clients around, there's often the hyperactivity, but there is some research around ADHD and lethargy and how it can go to the crashing opposite.
Definitely.
Actually can be really tough to move the body and to get places, and there's kind of like a low exhausted type phase that can happen sometimes for kids, and sometimes that's for children kind of connected to, it puts them in an emotionally alone space, like sometimes they might go or connected to shame, so there might be something going on for this little one where she just feels like there's no reason to care. Yeah, I think it's a tricky one without knowing a little bit more context, but I wonder if it is connected a little bit to lethargy, or I think we had it in one of our coaching calls in the program a little while ago where the mum ended up kind of being curious with the kid around what's getting in the way and what's making it hard to do that. And the kid said something like, it's just really hard to do it on my own. Will you do it with me? And, I think the kid was like 9 or 10. And so, of course, his parents were like, do we have to help them brush their teeth? Well, if that's where they're at right now, maybe it is kickstarting that motivation with, why don't I stand with you and we brush our teeth together? Or do you need help washing your hair? Or I mean, look at the age of 8 or 9, sometimes it is a lot, to be by yourself, to go and have a shower and brush your hair or go and brush your teeth. And look, as parents, we all get it. It's tiring having a child. It's tiring having a child with challenges. And so, I can understand that a lot of the time, like, just go brush your teeth or go brush your hair. We have a couple of comments here on Facebook saying that I repeat myself like no one's business. And someone else is saying same here. It's been an ongoing battle. We mostly get, this is the worst thing ever. And Danielle says, I'll definitely join a coaching call to discuss more. So she is watching. So it's like, as parents, we can sound like that broken record. Like, how many times we asked to brush the teeth? Okay, so asking is probably not working anymore. And I don't know if people have heard, I know we talk a lot about it in the program and in my Jumpstart for Parenting program around connection before correcting the behavior. Connection before correction, or connection before redirecting. That they actually might need, especially kids where there's brain fog and they're easily distracted, or their nervous system is just bouncing up and down, to actually move into their physical space, connect with them, in relationship, but also connect to their emotion. Like, hey, I know that it feels like the worst thing ever to have a shower. Like, use the terms that they're using.
Yes.
Well, no wonder you don't want to wash your hair if you think it's the worst thing in the world. You know, you could bring a bit of silliness in it, but also empathy. You know, ask them, is there something that might make that easier? And they might still say, no, I just don't want to do it. Yeah, but we do need to shower. You know, can I come with you? Do you want me to help rinse your hair? Yeah.
And then Holly's saying, and the comments, okay, mum, it's literally the same routines. My anxiety needs calm and my son needs touch for regulation. So it's a battle to have both of us relax. And I totally get that as well, Holly, because, you know, it is tiring, not only working and having kids and then the ADHD and all of it. And I think I was actually talking to someone about something similar today. And you know, I think that especially with like showers, and I can tell you there are days that maybe one of my sons won't go for like 3 days without having a shower. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But finding and being curious about why they don't want to, I think is the best place to come from. And again, I've used that strategy many times, Ashley, because you might find that you actually work it out and they might go, oh, yeah, well, actually, it's really lonely. I don't want to be lonely, or I'm just tired. I really, so then you can work with them to work out a strategy of maybe we do a shower in the morning, or maybe we do the shower as soon as we get home from school rather than when they're really tired and ready for bed. So it's working with them to come up with a solution rather than you just providing that solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. And I think even with the curiosities, you can guess curiosities. Like, they might just have what we say FOMO. They might not want to miss out on playing more screen time or watching TV. So it's like, okay, is this possibly because it's actually really hard to stop what you're playing and doing? Or is this because you're tired? Yeah. So putting out some guesses and then coming up with that solution together.
That's awesome. So our next question was from Jennifer, and she asked, I have heard from every source that if you have a child with ADHD, early treatment is crucial. If the family chooses to try the natural route instead of or before medication, what exactly does that kind of treatment look like and involve? Well, that's probably a little bit more for me, or maybe it's from a parenting side as well, Ashley.
One we can do together. I guess my initial thoughts are, it sounds like treatment has been explained that treatment's medication. And I know from a therapeutic perspective, treatment can be a much broader, holistic approach. Okay. And so in my experience of working with children and families, and I guess you could probably speak to the evidence base, as there's no evidence to show if you do medication early that it's going to cure ADHD, because it doesn't. No. And then actually nutrition and natural ways is actually science evidence based. So it's kind of moving. One is the medical model of looking at treating ADHD when we look at it as a medical, but we also know there is ample research now to show that ADHD can be supported through nutrition as well as parenting approach, environment, getting the school to shift on how they respond, like much more holistically.
Yeah. I agree. And, I say this analogy quite a bit. I feel like, when I liken our kids to baking a pie, and we want to just make a good pie. It doesn't have to be like the most amazing pie, but we want to make a good pie. And there are many ingredients that go into that. Now, from my point of view, medication is literally just a Band-Aid to treat symptoms. It's not actually getting to the underlying reasons of why those symptoms are there in the first place. And so when we look at baking a pie, the first ingredient, you can't bake a pie without the pie crust. So for me, the diet and the nutrition is that pie crust. It's the foundation of everything. If you are pounding your body with CRAP, you're going to put out a CRAP pie crust that's going to fall apart. And then we've got all those other ingredients. We've got that parenting is huge. It's a big component of renewing, the family unit, bringing that. I think I remember you telling me, or someone else told me, I'm not sure, that we as parents, we hold the key to our children's nervous system until like the age of 12, was it, or 13?
Oh, we are the container for their nervous system well into adolescence. Even because in adolescence, that frontal lobe cortex goes under construction and they go back to emotion brain default.
Yes.
So, yeah, and we actually really need to co-regulate our children developmentally fully until I think it's like age 7, 8. And then even beyond that, they still need us a lot of the time. But yeah.
So if your house is that high stress, then of course your child's going to be high stress and you're going to be high stress. And so it's really about calming down the house, approaching with this compassion and this empathy in the strategies that you're suggesting today, but bringing in all of these pieces of the pie, the ingredients of the pie, because yes, I actually do think it is critical for success, not only for children with ADHD, but if you think about this, a lot of the families that I work with, I help their children first, and then all of a sudden, like, well, I want to do the same testing. I want to go through this. And when you look at an adult, and if they have all these years of dysfunction and bad diet and environmental toxin exposure and trauma from relationships in the past, there is a lot more work that we have to do. So yes, it's critical for everyone to set that good foundation, that base, right from an early age.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's so many things that exacerbate ADHD-based symptoms. Yeah.
Yes.
I love how you're saying our parents even kind of go, oh, this is making me feel great when they make diet changes as well. It's like, yeah, we're reducing inflammation, which we know is linked to, more stress and anxiety. Yeah.
Yep. All of that. Okay, we have another question from Monica. She's saying, I'm very new in learning about ADHD. What is a good way to help my son when he is super fixed on joking with one of his sisters? It makes me laugh, sorry, because when my two boys get into that joking mode, they don't stop. And she's like, what happens when they don't relent? And I'm like, it's normal. It happens in my house too. And she's like, even after asking him to stop or walk away several times.
Yeah, the relentless joking. So yeah, I guess what you're kind of highlighting, Dana, is that some of it is developmental kind of just behavior that can happen. However, it can be tricky when you have a sibling who really wants to put in a boundary and go, I've had enough. Yes. And I guess I'd be curious too, is the joking, is it kind of being playful and trying to be funny, or is he joking and being a bit teasing? Is it kind of mean-based joking? So there might be something around there. I guess what we do is when parents have questions about any behavior is I talk a lot about what's behind the behavior, what's beyond the behavior, what is the behavior trying to communicate, or what might be its function. So with things like joking and relentless joking, it could be connection seeking. You might be trying to connect, and we don't know, and a lot of kids with ADHD who have had some social difficulties, it can be really tricky for them to even know how to connect. So we do it in ways that it's like, oh, this is the best way I know how to try to feel like I fit in. Is he trying to be seen? Maybe he's feeling invisible in parts of his life. So this is one way I get connection and attention from mum. Some kids have a real fear of being invisible in their family systems, in particular when things have been really tough. And kids with ADHD are very aware of the stress that their parents are sitting with, and they often blame their own behaviors, right? They know it's like, I'm not doing well. So there can sometimes be connected to, we talk a lot about shame and ADHD. He might just think it's funny, or he might be trying to control or dominate the sibling dynamic. So again, it's probably that curiosity, and it might be that mum is best placed to go, oh yeah, is there a bit of context? What could this be about? What does it feel like? And then in terms of what to do about it, how to help him, is you name that need. So it could be, are you wanting to have some more connection time? Or are you trying to, are you trying to be funny to your sister? Are you feeling a little bit left out? So you might actually try to name or guess what you think could be happening. And again, guessing the feeling, is he wanting to be silly? Is he frustrated and now he's joking? And then a lot of the reminders, gentle but firm reminders of what the expectations are in relationships in the home. So it might be, hey, your sister's asked you to stop. So what do we need to do? We need to stop the joking now. And then, that connection before redirecting him somewhere else. And if he's still kind of going and unable to stop, he might need actually, mum to sit with him and go, I can see it's really hard to stop joking. Your sister's asked you to stop. She's not liking it. So you can invite him into perspective taking. However, depending on where he's at in his emotional regulation, it can be really tough for kids with ADHD to take on the perspective of others before they have lots of experiences of someone using empathy with them to help them understand their emotional experience first. I don't know if that makes sense, before they can think of the sister's emotional experience.
No, I understand. And I think, that comes back to the consistency. So if you are leading with that curiosity and that empathy, and you're doing that every time this is happening, then that's when that perspective can come in. One of the other things that I've found worked with a lot of the kids that I work with is setting that connection time, whether it be on a daily basis, start in an area that's manageable. Like if it's 10 minutes a week where it's just you and him, and every week at the same time, that 10 minutes is him and you, and he decides what you do for that 10 minutes. Obviously, you want to do a bit more than 10 minutes a week, but if he knows that he's going to get that connection at that time, he may start to reduce the amount that he's seeking in other areas of life.
Absolutely. When they know there's like a predictable one-on-one time coming up with the caregiver, you'll see some of those behaviors reduce throughout the week. Even 20 minutes once a week, I've been trying to do with my little one. I set the timer and it goes by really quick. And it's doing that one-on-one time without electronics, no TV, no gaming. And it's literally, we're just going to sit, and I have a couple options for us to play with. Yeah.
And as they get older, let them drive the options rather than, obviously when they're young, and we have to give them the options. But, with my sons, I was like, okay, this is our time. What are you going to do? And I don't drive any part of it, and let them. So we've got a number of comments here. I'm going to try and get through the questions that people had asked previously, and then we'll see if we have time to go back and look at those other questions. So the next one was from Jennifer. What are the best parenting strategies for raising a child with ADHD? There are so many out there, but most of them work best with neurotypical kids rather than neurodiverse kids.
Yeah. Well, hopefully some of what we've already kind of shared will speak to those ADHD specific parenting strategies. But as a parenting approach as a whole, it's really about a responsive, attuned, relationally based parenting. It's moving away from that real traditional behavioral management, behavioral modification, where the focus is on trying to stop the behavior and gain compliance. And instead, the focus is more about the long-term, it's the long route of parenting. We talk about high investment in, your empathy and helping them feel seen, heard, soothed, and acknowledged for all parts of them. It's, teaching the emotional regulation development. And moving away from just trying to stop the behavior. I had a parent not that long ago say, I use that empathy thing, Ashley, and it's not working. So walk me through not working. Well, I didn't get them to change the behavior. Yeah. Sometimes the empathy, that's not even the goal, right? I was thinking about, okay, if we move in with the agenda that using this compassion and empathy, connection before correction, name it to tame it, is going to get me compliance, it's very likely not. over time is what we want to be teaching our kids, that they'll eventually self-discipline. They'll recognize their feelings. They'll be able to regulate the big feelings. They'll be able to more likely stay in that window of tolerance. But that takes, as you said, a lot of consistency and a lot of time. And there's lots and lots of research out there about this type of approach. Like I said, Dr. Ross Green talks about it, Mona Delahook, Dan Siegel. There's lots and lots of people who are doing this type of work, that it is really underpinned by the neuroscience. And of course, highly complemented with the nutritional and reducing inflammation, because you can change a lot of the parenting, but if your kid is still in this exacerbated state, it's another band-aid. It's like putting in all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's all those ingredients. So we had another question from Fraten. So she had a second one. How do you stop a child from being silly all the time? And how do you make an older child have an interest or a motivation in learning a higher degree like college?
Nice. There's a couple questions in there. A child being silly all the time. I would say that probably connects back to the child I was saying with the joking. A child is being silly all the time. Again, I'm curious around what are they trying to communicate? Are they trying to connection seek? That feels like probably a connection seeking or a belonging seeking, or kids who have low self-esteem and low confidence, which we know kids with ADHD can struggle with that low self-esteem and confidence because they get so much negative feedback about themselves. And so being silly is a way to distract from their deep, the identity that maybe they don't feel good about themselves. So I'm going to be the class clown. I'm going to distract, or I'm trying to connect with my parents or a sibling or classmates.
Hearing me. No, I totally agree there. Can you just talk a bit? I know you talk about shame a lot. Can you just explain for everyone watching a little bit more about that? Because you've mentioned it a few times today, and I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, that's helpful. So I guess thinking shame is different than guilt. Where guilt is when kids feel, oh, I did something wrong. And that's a natural development phase that happens over time. Now, kids with ADHD, often from a young age, because their nervous system is, wired in a different way, it's much more sensitive. And so they're easily activated. So they, show it in behaviors. They often get into a lot of trouble, right? Or there's a lot of correcting their behavior that happens over time at school and at home. And so what can happen over time is there can be a development of internal sense of shame. And shame is, rather than going, I did something bad or I did something wrong, it's I'm bad. So they start to take it quite personally. And we talk about this a lot in the program group coaching, is that a lot of kids will start showing up and saying negative things about themselves, like, oh, I'm stupid, or I'm not good enough, or I can't get it right, or always make mistakes, or they might start calling other people, stupid, and kind of projecting that emotion. That shame can develop over time after lots of negative feedback. And because it's like, I am bad. So when parents start to notice that showing up for their child, in terms of the best way to respond is acknowledge it. So actually saying, you're feeling really stupid. That actually must feel really sad. Because if you think about how sad it would feel to walk around feeling like I'm naughty and I'm bad, that would feel really, really scary and sad. And shame is quite an intolerable emotion. It's quite overwhelming. I don't know if people are familiar with Brene Brown's work on shame. And so because it's so overwhelming, the nervous system usually kicks off and will move children into what we call the shield of shame. So it's a little protective armor, and they'll go into rage, lying, or denial, blaming others, or minimizing what's happened, because it's a way to protect themselves from feeling bad about what they've done. Yeah.
And you bring up a good point in saying, they often go with lying, and people might have heard that, there's the ADHD lying, and that kids with ADHD might lie more. And that's exactly what you're saying. It is that shield of shame. If you just put yourself in one of our children's, I'm just saying this generally, not to you, not to anyone of the audience, but and I've thought about this many times, especially when my son was struggling, and I put myself in his shoes. If you had someone sitting next to you at your work desk every day saying, you typed that wrong. No, go and do that. Oh, you opened up the wrong tab. Oh, you can't do that very well. Why did you do that? Could you imagine how you would feel? I know I would feel awful. And we've got fully developed brains. Whereas our kids, as you said, especially even the teenagers, their frontal lobe is under construction. Like it's got a sign up there as like, do not come close. That's why teenage. So if you think about, if you had someone, if that kid, that's all they're hearing all day long, they're going to put up that shield of shame. They're going to lie because they don't want to feel that feeling. Yeah. They're going to rage. They're going to, Amy's saying, yes, the shield of shame.
Yeah, avoid getting in trouble at all costs and avoid that feeling of bad. And doesn't the research, I think you speak about it, Dana, in the past, that kids with ADHD receive like 20,000 more negative messages than their peers.
Oh, per year.
There you go.
Like, think about that.
Massive. And again, I often will invite parents into some self-compassion for themselves, is that you didn't set out to parent in a shaming way. Like it is just happens where, and it's not like we're intentionally shaming our children. It's different. It's just them being corrected all the time, that over time, they start to experience that. Yeah. But the beauty of the brain and the beauty of relationships is we can heal it. We can recover. We can build new pathways. And the antidote, I have a beautiful supervisor that always says the antidote to shame is compassion.
Mm-hmm. So you lead with compassion. And I think another way to look, or not another way to look at it, but I find that when you disconnect from, the reason we say, stop doing this, don't do this, is because we're busy. We're trying to juggle so many different things as parents. We've got, kids, we're working, we're doing all of this. And so really for us, it's just about getting the job done at the end of the day. But if we disconnect from that outcome of something and just lead with that compassion and that empathy and that naming of what they're going through, the change in the children, I mean, I've seen it for myself, is just amazing, because it's a whole different approach. And rather than them having all this negative, they're having someone come to them and show them that compassion and that empathy, and then have that connection, because at the end of the day, that's all our kids want.
It's all they want is connection, and it's that relationship. They want to be able to come back in relationship and feel seen, heard, soothed, and acknowledged for all parts of them, no matter how bad it got. Which is, I know we talk about in the Jumpstart program and also in your program with parents around repair. There's always ways to reconnect after hard times.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in my program, we talk about the 3-step blueprint to helping kids with ADHD thrive and reduce those symptoms naturally. There's reduce, there's restore, and there's renew. That could also be repair. And it is very much about repairing that family unit, repairing that connection, because it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. It can be repaired, it can be renewed, and our kids can thrive. I'm just going to jump over to Facebook just to see if I can see any more
comments.
More comments. For some reason, it always does this. I can only see the last couple, and it won't let me. Won't let me actually see the other ones. I can only see the last 4, and I can't even see them on Facebook either. Hold on, let's see if I can. Nope, that won't work.
Well, you're looking, I realized we didn't quite answer the college question. However,
yes, why don't you go that while I'm looking at this? Yes.
I'm hoping that some of what we've spoken about already might support the answer to that question. Again, it might be around, sounds like motivation or interest in going to college. I mean, the thing is, with a young adult or an adolescent, can't make them do anything, it is kind of the really tricky bit for us as parents to sit in that they might make choices at that stage. But again, I'd be curious around what's behind the low motivation. Is it low self-esteem? Do they not think they'd be good enough for college? Do they think they can manage it? Is it just no interest? Are they not quite sure what they want to do when they get there, what they want to study? Perhaps they're really lost in a little bit of their identity and it's hard to do future focus, or there might be some of that lethargy stuff happening as well.
But also inflammation, if that kid's struggling, and lethargy can come from that over the, nervous system being overcharged and everything. But at the same time, there can be things that are driving that lack of motivation that is actually making them physically tired and making them not motivated. I do a lot on genetics in the program once we've reduced the inflammation. And it's really interesting to look at some of the genes underneath what's going on in that child. And one in particular, or a couple in particular, will determine whether or not that child, when they do things that they don't want to do, on how motivated they are versus like they're going to seek out things that actually bring them pleasure. So, when they get to that age, they do need to find themselves. And forcing our child, I know, yes, we as parents, all we want our children to do is go to college, but forcing our child to do something that actually doesn't bring them pleasure, especially if they've got these underlying genetic mutations, is going to work against you rather than work for you. So it's about that balance of like guiding versus pushing, but also looking at all the different ingredients. Is there inflammation in the body? Is there an overactive nervous system? Is there genetics that are driving that? And so, I think it's looking at that whole picture and then formulating a way forward. And again, go with curiosity, work out what's underlying that lack of motivation. So, we had a question from someone saying how to help an 8-year-old boy to unwind and get to sleep.
Yeah, unwinding and getting to sleep. If you think about what happens in the ADHD nervous system, most kids are sitting in that chronic hyper aroused state physiologically, which means they are revved up.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight, easily switched into fight or flight. They are just in this heightened state. And so what happens is then we go, okay, it's time for bed. And their nervous system's like, I don't know how to unwind down, or I can't wind down, or I don't feel safe enough to wind down. So it's actually really tricky sometimes for kids to bring on that parasympathetic nervous system to relax and unwind. And I think we talk about the sleep routine a lot in the Jumpstart in one of the modules around what is the routine? What can it look like? What can rituals look like? How do we, what types of foods, what can actually support bringing on the parasympathetic nervous system? And it's going to be slightly different for every kid, but like things that, actually soothe him. The quickest way to soothe our children is through relationship. So it might be doing something one-on-one, connection with him, something with his body, getting his body to move a bit. Also depends on you could probably speak more to that, Donna, what he's eaten for dinner or afternoon tea. Like, is he heightened? Is there blood sugar? Yeah, there's lots of different contributing factors.
And I'm going to bring it back to genetics again, because I was just looking at a genetic test for one of the families that I'm working with, and they had this particular, combination of mutations in their genes. But some people have a poor response to food in terms of sleep. And what happens is if you eat food too close to bedtime, it can actually stop you falling asleep. Layering on top of that, you may have tendencies in your genetics that predispose you to binging. And so you're going to binge on food, which will then affect your ability to fall asleep. So that's one component. But also things that I found work really, really well is, and again, it's all about consistency. Doing it one day here, one day there, it's not going to work, is getting those adult dot-to-dot books. There's like 1,000 dots on it. and getting your kid, and you can even sit there with them, having that connection, having them go dot, 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 dot. Very mindful. It's that mindfulness meditation, but in their mind, they're actually doing an activity. Same with the adult coloring in book. They're just there coloring like that, and that can bring them down. So, as Ashley said, they are in that heightened state. The nighttime routine is super duper critical. You've mentioned a lot the Jumpstart program, and probably a lot of people don't know what it is, but we work together to build out this Jumpstart for Parenting for ADHD. And Ashley shares all of these tips, education about how to parent a child with ADHD. So just if you've heard that a few times going, what is Jumpstart? That's what it is. I'll go to that in a second. But is there anything else on the sleep side of things?
I would just also invite parents to think that sometimes sleep, or the point of sleep, especially for littlies, can be a point of disconnection in relationship. So for some kids, it can be really tricky to separate. So if there's a little bit of separation anxiety. So you can see how there could be so many different factors contributing to sleeping tricky. So creating new positive sleep associations, figuring out how to wind down that nervous system are very, very key ingredients.
Yep. And then really the last 2 hours before bed, that wind down is super important. No screens at least 1 to 2 hours before bed, because the blue light from the screens can affect sleep as well. And it actually, rather than you think it's calming them, it's doing the opposite. It's getting their mind racing. So that's a few tips. If you want to learn more, I'll drop that link to that Jumpstart program afterwards. We are coming up for time. I know you've actually got to go and to another client right now, and so I don't want to take any more time. You've helped so much, Ashley. I just want to thank you for joining me today. I think I can speak for all of us and say that every time you speak, I know I do glean so much information from you about parenting a child with ADHD. And if anyone listening today needs some additional support, as I mentioned, we have teamed up with Ashley to create a program specifically for parents of children with ADHD, and it gives you all of the tools, everything that she mentioned today, plus so much more that you need in your parenting toolbox for neurodiverse child. We've been super busy behind the scenes the last few months. We've been adding some really amazing new content to it so that parents get, even more support than in our original Parenting Jumpstart program. So we can drop the links to that. Amy's saying thank you so much. Stephanie's saying thank you. So Ashley, I just have to say thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have any final words?
No, just thank you as well for having me, and it's always great to connect with you and all of the parents, and yeah, it's exciting to share.
Fabulous. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And if you want to hear more from Ashley, also you can check out the Soaring Child podcast. I think we've got 3 or 4 episodes, and each episode is better than the next. And the next one's better than the last. They're all amazing. Yeah. So guys, have a wonderful evening, and we will talk to you